Hello and welcome to this installment of the four-part 2013 NISA Center Ramadan Dialogues. My name is Will Goodyear. I'm a research associate here at the Center, and I am joined today by Ambassador James LaRocco, Director of the Center. As always with the NISA Center, I'd like to reiterate that the views expressed in this film do not represent those of the United States government, the Department of Defense, or the National Defense University. Ambassador, the U.S. is scheduled to leave Afghanistan in 2015 after nearly a decade and a half of fighting. Some analysts predict that the U.S. will leave behind a broken state that will be vulnerable to terrorist attacks and could even fall once again under Taliban rule. How are the U.S., the coalition, and Afghanistan's neighbors working to avoid this? What must Afghanistan do?
I think the best way to really understand, or to try to understand, what Afghanistan will be facing in 2015 is to separate an analysis into three sections. The first is security. What is clear to me in visiting Afghanistan and seeing firsthand what has taken place there is, in fact, the security situation has improved dramatically. Even though there are incidents every day, it is very clear that there are Afghan forces, whether they are military or police, that have in fact taken over enormous responsibilities for their own security. And that on the security side, this is one I am least concerned about. I believe that other nations, including my own, will continue to help them year by year. But they will again take overall responsibility and have already assumed that responsibility throughout Afghanistan. And they are doing an enormous job. They are well trained. The literacy rates, which were close to zero before, are now very, very high, and they are able to read, write reports, and communicate in ways that they could not do 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. The second element after security is governance. I must say I'm deeply concerned about that. That is something that, while we can help with, is really up to the Afghan leadership and people themselves to resolve. We cannot hide the corruption. We cannot hide the mismanagement that has taken place there. We see that there will be elections and a leadership change next year. What will that bring? This is both a challenge and an opportunity for the Afghan people. Are they ready? I cannot say. But what we need is the emergence of a leadership group that will understand that while the world community will help, they must lead. They must lead Afghanistan with a vision that in fact is one that other countries in the region understand and other countries in the world understand. And I'm very concerned that even holding the elections will prove a challenge. But beyond that, the governance question is the one that I think really will determine whether Afghanistan will succeed or not. Now, that governance is related to the third issue, which is the economy. The Afghan economy over the last decade or so has relied so much on the outside community for its growth and development. That will change. The amount of financial support that will come in from the outside world will drop. And we could see the gross domestic product of Afghanistan drop by as much as 30 to 50% over the next 5 years. How will they cope with that? Now, with good governance and good security, this will allow for the investment that is necessary to develop Afghanistan. We know from studies that there is as much as $1 trillion worth of mineral and metal resources in that country. But without security and without good governance, investors will not come. So the key, again, to me is really the governance. I think the security is manageable and the economy is doable, but only through adequate governance that in fact leads the people, but at the same time allows other countries, their neighbors, to invest in them and to have confidence that a stable, secure, and prosperous Afghanistan will raise them up as well.
You mentioned the important roles that neighbors will have to play in this. One of Afghanistan's neighbors, Pakistan, recently held an election in which Nawaz Sharif won an unprecedented third term. Do you foresee a reshaping or resetting of U.S.-Pakistani ties in the period ahead?
I believe that this is a very key question. Afghanistan cannot be successful unless Pakistan plays a very key role in that development, whether it is from a security point of view, a governance point of view, or an economic point of view. All three of these issues are intricately linked to what Pakistan will do. Now, I myself am greatly heartened by this election. This was a peaceful transfer from one government to another, which is not seen in Pakistan's history. And this is also a government that I believe understands the dangers, challenges, and opportunities ahead for Pakistan. The new Pakistan leadership fully appreciates that the United States, the coalition, and others are not going to play the role that they played before in Afghanistan. They will still be there, and they will be partners for development and stability. But I believe that Pakistan now is assessing how it will have a relationship with the United States and others that will make sure that the collapse of Afghanistan does not pose an impossible problem for Pakistan. Pakistan is the key. At the same time, I believe the new government in Pakistan understands that there are many shared interests with my country in particular, but with others as well. And there are other interests that are not shared. And it's time to develop a correct strategic relationship that emphasizes those shared interests so that all countries can in fact develop a new constructive relationship while resolving those issues that are not shared interests. And we know what they are. So that in fact we can have a stable, predictable relationship between Pakistan and her neighbors, as well as with key countries like the United States, which remains Pakistan's largest trading partner.
You've touched upon a number of elements that will be involved in Afghanistan's transition. What, in your view, would a successful transition look like?
Again, I think this is important that everyone has a vision of success. In the recent years, throughout this region, people have struggled to understand what success would even mean. How do you define it? What is it? People understand failure, and they're trying to prevent that, but that's not good enough. There must be a vision with a leadership that provides that vision to its people. Now, what do I see as that vision? In the case of Afghanistan, it clearly is an Afghanistan which is in fact at the center of development that is all around it. In China, Southeast Asia, in India, the Indian subcontinent, and as this moves up through Pakistan, on the other side in Central Asia, Afghanistan will take its place at this Silk Road nexus, where in fact it can be a transportation hub, it can be a center of industry in terms of raw materials and processed raw materials. And again, I believe we cannot avoid bringing Iran into this picture as well, which is why I've talked about Iran in a previous session. A successful Afghanistan needs a Pakistan that is growing. It needs an Iran that is growing. It also needs a Central Asia that is growing. And I could see that by 2025, probably not before then. So this is a long-term project. Let's not fool ourselves. This is not going to develop overnight. But by 2025, we could have an Afghanistan that can stand on its own feet and that in fact can be investor itself, not only in its own country, but in neighboring countries, where you have the free flow of labor and capital that creates for this region what we've seen in Europe, what we've seen in North America, where we've seen in East Asia, that in fact allows everyone to benefit and everyone to provide new hope for its peoples. If we look at Asia, especially East Asia, we have seen an unprecedented number of people in world history who have climbed out of poverty. Billions of people have climbed out of poverty in the last generation. Never happened before in all of humankind. This is possible in Afghanistan. This is possible throughout South Asia and Central Asia. This is a vision that we should work for. But it does require good governance, it requires sound policies, and it requires stability and security. I see that possible by 2025, if not sooner. But this is going to take an enormous amount of work and a commitment by rulers and those whom they rule to work towards a common vision.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us. If you would have any comments or questions that you would like featured in a follow-up session of the Ramadan Dialogues, please feel free to message us on our Twitter feed, Facebook, or in an email on the following slide. Thank you very much.